Hi, everybody. This is Rick Manning, President of Americans for Limited Government. Nancy Pelosi has some harsh reality coming to her, and I think it's just clicking in right now because even the New York Times is predicting a bad future for her and her leadership in the House as they say, a red wave is coming. We shared with you last week a chart from Real Clear Politics showing generic ballots. And why this matters is generic ballots are a precursor to how people are going to vote. It's they're saying I'll vote for the Republican rather than the Democrat. And quite honestly, districts that are heavily Democrat, which are about 100 districts in the country out of 435, skew the generic ballot dramatically more towards the Democrats because most Republican districts are relatively competitive. So, I wanted to bring this chart back up for you and just show you exactly what's going on and why it matters. So this is the chart here. It's from Real Clear Politics. You can get there today at realclearpolitics.com yourself. And what I want you to see is this. If we go to the last 30 days, okay, this is actually a poll resulting from actually, I don't know why that exists. One of the really strong Republican polls dropped off. That's what happened. +7 poll dropped off. But here's where we are today. The Republicans are plus 3.2%. Where we were when we last met was right there, with the Republicans up about 2.2%. And you contrast that with where we were on October 13th, when we had basically a half-point margin for the Republicans. So what's happening is the wave is continuing, and you have a kind of the Democrats, people saying we vote for Democrats, go down, but more people are saying that they're going to vote for Republicans than saying they vote for Democrats. Notice how this arc is much higher. This angle is much higher this way than it is going this way. Now, still going down for the Democrats, but the reason that matters is because it tells you that this isn't just people saying, "Oh, I was going to vote for the Democrats and I'm going to vote for the Republicans." This is really an indication of how undecideds are breaking. And that difference in terms of a slant that's about like that versus a slant that's like that, those are the independents who are now flopping to the Republicans pretty overwhelmingly. Usually in this kind of election, you look at a 2-to-1 to 3-to-1 advantage for late deciding independents going against the incumbent party. And in this case, that means toward the Republican Party. And so that's kind of where we, and we talked a lot about that about a week ago. And I wanted to make it so you guys could see exactly what I was talking about. And if we really get lucky, I'll go get my little cursor where I want it. So what this shows you is all the talk about the stopping of the red wave, Nancy's enthusiastic, all that is all done with. You don't have to look any further than a New York Times article quoting Democrat pollster Doug Schoen, saying that brace for a Republican wave. It's very Schoen is a Democrat pollster. He's not a Republican pollster. He's not hoping for a Republican wave. He's just saying there's going to be one. And I'll just give you a quote. The Republican Party is, let's see if I can make that bigger for you. I don't even know what this is. Okay, right here. The Republican Party is on the cusp of a substantial midterm election victory that could rival their wins in 1994 and 2010. That's talking 40 to 60 seats flipping. Now, I've thought all along we were going to get about 40 seats total. But if there's 40 seats flipping in this election, that would be devastating to the Democrats, because in Democrat-run states, they've redistricted in such a way to try to maximize the number of Democrat representatives that come out of those states. So it means in places like Rhode Island, where the Republicans have no members of the House, right now, the Republican is up by 8 points in Rhode Island, and we're likely to get a Republican representative from the state of Rhode Island for the first time in maybe more than a decade. I'm trying to remember. I remember the guy, but I remember his face. Can't remember the name. It's like almost 2 decades since we've had a Republican from Rhode Island. It means that races that are competitive. I'll give you one. Neil Parrott from in Western Maryland is in a dead heat district in terms of registration with a guy named David Trone, who's the incumbent. Well, in this election scenario, Parrott's going to wipe out Trone. Okay, it's not even going to be close. And yet the National Republican Congressional Committee has put zero effort into that race because Parrott isn't going to support the establishment. And so the establishment isn't supporting him. And just to quote Sean, there's been a 3-point swing to Republicans in generic ballot polling in just the last month. According to the Real Clear Politics average, what we just looked at, Democrats led by as much as 1.3 points in September, but as of Monday, Republicans were up by 1.8 points. Well, folks, when he wrote that was true, but now the Republicans are up by 3.2 points. So you can see how much the wave is kind of swelling right now. And the important thing about this is people can vote now. And so while Democrats are banking ballot votes right now, they're going to have a problem because a lot of those votes they're trying to bank aren't going to be willing to be banked for them. So that's a challenge for the Democrats. A late September ABC News Washington Post poll found the Republican advantage concentrated where it's needed most. The GOP had a 5-point lead among likely voters nationwide, but a 21-point margin in competitive congressional districts. A 21-point margin in competitive congressional districts, folks. That is, and this is Doug Schoen. I'm taking his analysis, not mine. I've talked about this before, but I just wanted to show that this is now coming to where the Democrat pollsters are now trying to alert people that, folks, it's going to get really rough on election day. When you're talking about a 21-point margin in competitive districts, that explains something that I heard on the radio this morning, that the Democrats are beginning to pull money and put their TV buys and pull it out of places where the Democrats were only had a 10-point advantage in kind of the voting history of the district from the presidential election. They're called D+10 districts. So districts that were marginally Republican, D+1 to D+10, which is considered to be a significantly safe district. The Democratic Party has begun, according to radio reports, to pull advertising out of those districts and placing them in districts that are D+13, because they're trying to come up with a wall somewhere in terms of their constituents where they put their money to create a wall to stop districts that are heavily Democrat from flipping Republican in this session, in this election. Because ultimately, folks, when people they're taking their losses largely from women. Men are also flipping, but women in particular have been flipping hard for Republicans. And I would argue it's 3 things. It's women do the grocery shopping, by and large, and inflation is apparent there. Women are most involved in their children's education, and the craziness we're seeing in the schools is affecting suburban women who the Democrats believe they had flipped to be permanent Democrat constituencies of the last three election cycles, those women are now swinging back hard to Republicans because of, I think, and then crime. So you've got crime, inflation, and the schools, and at that point, there's nothing that the Democrats can say about abortion or other things that offset. You're messing with my kid. It's not safe to go outside. And oh, by the way, I can't afford to buy stuff at the grocery store. I'm having to cut back. Because remember, with inflation, I'm old enough to remember the 1970s and early 1980s with inflation, and many of you are too. But somebody who's 30, 35, 40 years old has never experienced inflation. They have no idea what's going on. And as a result, suddenly prices are going up, and they're trying to figure it out. And all they know is it's a whole lot cheaper to live under Donald Trump than it is under Joe Biden. And inflation is a hidden tax. And Joe Biden and his party are paying a price for that hidden tax. I'm going to just continue with Schoen here because it's kind of interesting. He says, if there are no upsets on either side and the toss-ups are evenly split, okay, that brings Republicans to a 240 to 195 majority, a gain of 28 seats. A Republican sweep of the toss-up races would expand the majority to 259-176. That's vanishingly unlikely, but so is a Democrat sweep of the toss-ups, which would still leave the GOP with a 7-seat majority. That's if you split the difference between the 240 and the 259, that tells you that Republicans, according to the analysis of the existing polls in congressional districts, Republicans are likely to end up at 250 to 185 advantage. What that does, folks, is that makes it so you're going to have a lot of people in there who want to drain the swamp. So we have a lot of people in there who got elected and said, I don't know I'm not necessarily tied to Kevin McCarthy as speaker. There's be a lot of Republicans in there who are going to actually say, we got to get this budget under control. We got to get inflation under control. And they're going to be committed to it, which means the kind of funding that goes to the federal government that gets spent, the deficit is going to be an issue with these people because the deficit is the direct contributor to inflation. Although nobody makes that tie, that is a direct contributor. So what he is producing, he also predicts that the Republicans will gain 2 seats in the Senate in Georgia and Nevada. And that means they lose in Arizona, but they hold the rest of all their incumbent seats, including Pennsylvania. And so that's what he's predicting in the Senate. I think he's got it wrong in Arizona. I think Blake Masters is going to win in Arizona. The numbers are all trending towards him. And with this wave that's crashing, and with the undecideds are going to end up going strongly towards the Republicans there. And that means you're going to see, I think Blake Masters will eke it out. Kerry Lake is in the governor's race, good chance of winning. And so those are things that are happening, which Doug Schoen, once again, Democrat pollster, those are his numbers, not mine. So although I don't disagree with him, obviously. So here's what you have. Nancy Pelosi is a dead duck right now. She's a dead duck right now. She knows it. And the Democrats are beginning to act like it, and that's when things get dangerous. I'm going to show you something here. As long as we're talking about districts, I'm going to show you, and I wish I could make this bigger. I wonder if I can. Let's see here. Okay. See if you guys can see that. Can you guys see that? Okay. These 12 Republican candidates are all candidates who have a good chance to win. They are going to be supportive of Americans for Limited Government's agenda. And they are important races that where money matters. And I wanted to let you know what those races are. Virginia 7, Yesli Vega. This is a seat that's in Northern Virginia. It's between Washington and Richmond. It was held by good friend Dave. Oh gosh, because I'm blanking, but held by a staunch conservative. He was beaten 4 years ago in 2018. Yesli Vega is a conservative. She beat a moderate candidate in the primary, and she is running. She's running very strong. So Yesli Vega, Virginia 7, Maryland 6, Neil Parrott. I told you about Neil. It's a 1 point district, and Neil is running strong, but he's got no money. So I'm personally going to send him some money this weekend. Bo Hines, North Carolina 13. Once again, I'm just going to read some of the names here with somebody I don't know. Florida 13, Anna Paulina Luna. Remember, this is what one of the leading conservative PACs has put out, and you can find this list in conservativehq.com. An article by George Raisley writes this up, so you can also go to conservativehq.com and get this list. You've got Tom Barrett in Michigan. That's a seat which right now Michigan is flipping hard towards the Republicans. Gretchen Whitmer, the witch who's the governor there, is who shut everybody down, who was the poster child for repressive regimes during the COVID crisis. She's only up by 4% right now, by 4 points right now against a Republican challenger. Tulsi Gabbard has said she's going in and campaigning with a Republican next week, a week before the election. And she's doing that to try to drive independents and Democrats who've had enough to vote for the Republican nominee. The Republican nominee there is not the establishment person. The establishment has basically turned their back on her. So once again, Tom Barrett's going to benefit from that. There's a wave going on in Michigan. There's a lot of activists there, great networks, and that's one that needs help. We've got a Pennsylvania 8. That's Jim Bonet. Once again, I'll tell you if I know about him. Carolyn Levitt. Carolyn Levitt is going to be 26 years old when she gets sworn in. This is a district that flips back and forth all the time in New Hampshire, and she's a young lady who is passionate in terms of her belief in America and America First policy. You may have seen some stuff about her, but she's very impressive. And truthfully, it's great if we can get some young people into Congress to remind all the old people that the future is theirs, and the old people have to stop voting for all the same old bad stuff. That's basically going to tie the future of our youth. Sandy Smith, North Carolina 1. Sandy's doing a great job down there. It's a race we can win. I read an article about her today, and very impressive. J.R. Majewski, Ohio 9. NRCC pulled their ads campaign because Majewski quoted QAnon and got attacked by the left for quoting QAnon. I'm not a big QAnon guy, but the NRCC are such wimps that they pulled an advertising campaign because it just wasn't one of them. Well, he obviously could use your help. He's in a dead heat race. Ohio is typically a dead heat state. It's been trending Republican, but you can't take things for granted. So Majewski needs your help. Sam Peters, Nevada 4. Nevada is shifting Republican right now. We've got one of the races that the expectation is that Republicans might win is the Nevada race and the Nevada Senate race, and the Republicans are ahead in the gubernatorial race, and as a result, the opportunity to pick up 1 or even 2 seats in Nevada exists. And I used to do a lot of stuff with people in Nevada. And let me tell you, the governor in Nevada, the Democratic governor in Nevada, shut the state down. He shut down the raceway. He shut down all their tourism and destroyed hundreds of millions, and not billions of dollars of people who've invested in that state based on a tourism economy. And he destroyed it because of his draconian COVID policies. And now those people who used to be saying we're going to lockstep Democrat, those people are rejecting the Democrats out of hand. And that's why you're going to see, so Sisolak, the governor, is going to get creamed. I think the Republicans are going to do very, very well there. And that's going to have a downstream effect on congressional races, on the Senate race. Adam Laxalt is the Attorney General of Nevada. He's son or grandson of Paul Laxalt, who was one of Reagan's top confidants in the Senate when he was in the Senate when Reagan was president. And he's done a great job as Attorney General of Nevada and would make a great senator. Sam Peters, and that's Sam Peters in Nevada. And Sam Peters, once again, certified conservative because he's on this list. Okay. Alex Skarlatos, Oregon 4. Alex Skarlatos was one of the, if you remember the story, the French train where the terrorists tried to take over and 3 Americans took down the terrorist. Well, Alex Skarlatos was one of those 3 Americans, and he ran for Congress 2 years ago and lost in Oregon where the Republicans didn't do well. But now there are people who are talking about picking up as many as 3 seats in Oregon. And right now there's 1 out of the 6 congressional districts in Oregon are Republican, and Skarlatos has a great chance to win. And he's running in a district that used to be timber country. A lot of blue collars still there in that district, and he's running in that district and is as a great candidate. So and is a conservative. And then Arizona 4, Kelly Cooper. Arizona 4, that's going to go a lot based on how the election goes in Arizona. If top of the ballot and Masters come through in Arizona, you can expect to see Republicans win down ballot. If Masters and Kari Lake don't come through, then we're going to end up losing Arizona 4. But what I'm telling you is this wave is so overwhelming that I personally believe that the Republicans are going to end up picking up 4 Senate seats. There'll be a surprise somewhere. I think Maggie Hassan will lose, is where I think one of the surprises in New Hampshire. Once again, Tulsi Gabbard went in and campaigned with a Republican running against her and attacked her pretty severely to New Hampshire voters. And remember, New Hampshire voters are very retail. They're very much hands-on from the presidential stuff. They know their stuff, and it's not unusual for them to flip their state legislature, massively going either way in various elections. And so in a wave election, Maggie Hassan could lose, just get blown out. And I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen. And lastly, I think that the Republicans will win Arizona. I think they will, the pickups, I'll just give you the pickups. Arizona, Nevada, New Hampshire. Okay, that's 3. And then you need to have one other that comes through that people aren't thinking about. And I would not be surprised at all if the Republican doesn't beat Patty Murray in Washington State. They've got mail balloting, which is really always a negative for Republicans, but I think that Patty Murray's in trouble. I think the Republican candidate, I wouldn't call her conservative. She's a moderate Republican, but I think that candidate has a real chance to win. Let's see what y'all have to say over here on the, and I'm going to just get this to go away. Boom, do that. We don't have an option to vote red. I've been a registered Democrat all my life, 66 years, but have not lost my mind. I've always voted the person at the party, but no more changing over to red. Wow. It's Chuck, I think a lot of people feel the Democratic Party has moved away from them, that the Democratic Party has become way too radical in terms of their approach. And as a result, it is as a result, a lot of people who work for a living, who are, just, patriotic citizens who believe in America, have been turned off by their radical message. There's a study that came out, it was the Fox poll, that showed a majority of Democrats right now, registered Democrats right now, believe that the country would be better off moving more towards socialist policies rather than free market policies. And so you've got and Republicans, on the other hand, totally reject that. So it's so you have now a majority of Democrats who are embracing socialism. And and just looking at the poll and reading some of the things that were said in side questions, it's not a good look. And what's more, it's really hard to come together and reconcile the country when one side is embracing socialism and the other side is embracing capitalism. And those are two diametrically opposed theories of how government should work. So let's see another one. Michael Lasowski, Democrat policies don't make sense. Open border, defund police, cashless bail, spend, just a few. Debbie, you are dead on. Let me talk about, I've spent a lot of time on crime stuff, and I'm not going to bore you on this, but yeah, I think crime's a big underlying issue. And cashless bail is essentially saying if somebody gets arrested, they don't have to post bond in order to get out of jail. What that means is somebody gets out of jail, and the police bring them in, they arrest them, they book them, and upon booking, they're released on their own recognizance. And as a result, you have people who are literally, no joke, this isn't hyperbole, are getting out before the paperwork is done and completed. Now, there's a case that I read about in LA County, which is where I'm from, and at least in that area. And the LA County sheriff was just bringing case after case where the sheriff would book them, bring them in, and they'd have to arrest the same guy like an hour later for harassing somebody else, for trying to steal from somebody else. And this happened 3 times in the same day. The same guy got arrested 3 times in the same day, but they couldn't hold him because of cashless bail. So, it's crazy, and it makes our streets unsafe. And when you turn your streets over to the criminals, guess what? People who aren't criminals don't go out on them. And it hurts business, it hurts your economy, it hurts everything about your city or your state. And so cashless bail is a bad thing. If you have that on your ballot anywhere in the country, I strongly encourage you to vote against it. New York State should vote Republican or they'll lose their courtyard. Country, everything be more expensive, so gasoline, so many crimes. Here's the thing on New York State. This is an interesting. In New York State, we all know that Cuomo was the governor. Cuomo had resigned because of some corruption problems. Big shock. He served his purpose in attacking Trump. He got too big for his britches, so the Democrats took him down. Because they didn't want him to run for president because he wasn't their chosen candidate for 2024. So Cuomo gets taken out. It was almost a mob hit, political hit anyway. And so he's replaced by his lieutenant governor, who's a woman, last name Hochul, Hochul. And she is even more far left than Cuomo. And right now, the last poll I saw, which was a week ago, before a lot of this wave information has come in, Lee Zeldin, who's a representative from New York City, is a Republican and is pretty conservative for New York. Lee Zeldin is within margin of error, meaning he's within 3 or 4 points of Kathy Hochul in that race. It is very possible that Lee Zeldin is going to win the governorship of New York. And if that happens, then things like edicts that didn't allow the hydraulic fracturing to occur in Western New York, where there's a lot of natural gas and oil, he will be able to take down those executive orders. If it hasn't been passed into law prohibiting it, they didn't actually pass legislation, he will be able to end executive orders that stopped the development of Western New York, and a place which is very poor. because they've lost their industries. And and the New York City centric New York government in Albany doesn't really care. But Western New York could be transformed the way as part of Ohio has been, parts of Pennsylvania have been, by the hydraulic fracturing industry. And that would be just one thing that if Lee Zeldin got elected, that you might see occur, which would revitalize that state. So yeah, New York State has to, I think things are moving in the right direction. The Zeldin race is the only one I've paid much attention to there, but there are a couple of House races in New York that are House of Representatives races in New York that are also extremely competitive. And, we need to reelect Claudia Tenney. Claudia Tenney is a great rep. And so we're seeing a lot of other races there that I think we have, that the Republicans have a reasonable chance to win. So let's see what else we have. Yeah, I'm just gonna put this. I love Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake is great. Okay, because she's from the media, she knows how to play the game, and she's running for governor in Arizona. For those who don't know, but here's what she did the other day. They were trying to attack her on what was it? They were trying to attack her on something, and she pulled out had a 20-year-old intern who wasn't a reporter, compile a list of all the Democrats who denied elections, who are attacking her on being an election denier. And so she had their 20-year-old intern just look through and do major media search of Democrats who denied elections. And she stood there in front of the media and read names like Stacey Abrams, who still hasn't admitted she lost the governorship 4 years ago in Georgia. She's running for governor again. It looks like she's going to get spanked pretty bad. But she's an election denier. Why didn't the press asking her about that? And she went through name after name after name of major Democrat players, Hillary Clinton, for one, who are election deniers by all accounts. And so she just threw it in their face and told them it was partisan garbage and said, back off. So that's and it was just a great show. So thanks for bringing up Carrie Lake. If you're in Arizona, if you're not working your tail off for Carrie Lake and Blake Masters, you're missing the boat. Richard, this is Jeff McElwain. He's a friend of mine who's a USC alum like me. And one of the smartest guys on foreign policy you will ever find. Richard, even some of my leftist faculty colleagues at my university are disillusioned by what they essentially created or hope for. They won't acknowledge it publicly, but will confide their doubts and thoughts to me personally. Facts and pragmatism are stubborn things. Keep plugging away. Folks, that's what we all have to understand. Ultimately, there's the Democrat Party is facing a split. The Democrat socialists are on the rise, and people who believe in America, who actually believe in America, believe in the American ideal, believe in things like free speech, whether they're on the left or the right. People who used to contribute to the ACLU now find the ACLU against free speech. And so so what we're beginning to see is a schism, just beginning to occur, particularly a little bit in academia amongst elites. That's why Naomi Wolf matters, because she's out talking about the abuse of power by the Democrats, driven by the COVID sanctions. That's why Barry Weiss matters, former New York Times editor, who has got her own Substack now, and she's not conservative by any stretch. She's a liberal Democrat, but she's sitting there saying it's nuts. The attack on the First Amendment is nuts, and is standing up on that. And so, we're beginning to see rational voices stand up in the Democrat Party and object. And as that occurs, they will be canceled. And Barry Weiss was canceled, and she was canceled for a simple reason. She had the audacity of letting Arkansas Republican senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton, to publish an op-ed on the pages of the New York Times, which took the left to task. And she thought the pages of the New York Times were supposed to have some balance on them, but her colleagues didn't. And they were offended that Tom Cotton, a U.S. senator, was allowed to have his words on their pages. And Barry Weiss ended up losing her job. whether she quit or she was fired. I don't remember. But fact of the matter is, she lost her job, a dream job, a powerful job. And now she's using her intellect to try to bring down the cancel culture warriors who she found to be so pervasive at the New York Times and other liberal institutions. So this is a debate that's happening right now. And Jeff brings that up, and I appreciate you doing it, because don't give up. We're on the precipice of winning. And I hear so many people saying, oh, the election's going to get stolen, and what can we do? Don't give up. The American people are on the side of freedom. They get suppressed. Sometimes they get confused. They vote for the wrong person. But in this election, the only way that we get beat is if our own voters say they're going to steal the election anyway. Why do I bother? Our own supporters don't register to vote, say, why bother? They're going to steal the election anyway. If you know somebody who's like that, who's not registered to vote, give them a call today, send them an email, and make sure they register to vote before the deadline. Because and some states the deadline's already passed, some states we still have the opportunity. But the fact of the matter is, every single one of those people needs to vote, because the single best way to make certain they don't steal the election is to make the margin of victory so large that they can't cheat to win it. And that's what we can do in this election. That's what each one of you can do with your supporters. I was going to talk about Steve Bannon a little bit today. I'm just going to do one thing on Bannon real quick, and switch gears, and then we'll move on. But I think this is an important. I want to just share the statement that I just put out on Bannon a few minutes ago. Let me get it so it can actually be seen. They show me a trick, and I'm now using it. So this is a statement that went out to nationwide media. You'll see it in the feed, in the Daily Grinder, whichever publication you get from us. You'll see it tomorrow. But today's sentencing of Stephen Bannon to 4 months in federal prison for a nothing process crime and a last-ditch attempt by the January 6th committee to show it as relevance is pathetic and will make Mr. Bannon a martyr. Mr. Bannon, who is by the way, I've known Steve for a while, and I assume we're friends. We've been friends for a long time. Who offered to testify before the committee after courts rejected his executive privilege claim, was then never allowed to testify as the Justice Department proceeded with the prosecution. It's obvious that House Democrats never cared about what Mr. Bannon had to say and were more interested in triggering nothing process crimes. Now they're visibly attempting the same garbage with a last-minute subpoena of former President Donald Trump as their committee comes to a close. If Nancy Pelosi wants to ensure that Donald Trump becomes president on January 20th, 2025 at noon, she will proceed with this martyr-making tactic. It's not hard to predict what Trump will say, and that is, bring it on, Nancy. I am so sick to death of these people who've politicized everything, and they're willing to burn the whole place down because they're not going to get their way, because they're going to get creamed. And the single best response to this radical abuse of power is to throw them out. Throw them out. We're going to talk a lot about what needs to be done immediately after November 8th. We'll talk a lot about that. I'll probably do a live stream on the 9th to talk a little bit about that. I've got to be in DC because there's a lot of stuff that happens right after the election that I've got to go do, but we'll do it on the 9th or the 10th. But for right now, the job is simple. We have to remove these people from office. They've betrayed the public trust, and they cannot be trusted to hold it for another 2 years. And on that thought, I just encourage you, find 3 people who would vote, but maybe they don't regularly vote. Call them up and just remind them, just say, hey, I'm going to make sure I go out and vote, and I'm going to vote for this person, this person, this person, and have a conversation with them and try to get them to vote. If you're in a mail-in ballot state, at that point, they can vote right there with you. You can just be on the phone with them and they can vote, or be on a Skype call or something like that. So, but if we don't get our people to vote, we need to get every single person in our Rolodex, is an old term, in our contact list to vote. And if we do that, this election is going to be one that's celebrated throughout American history. And with that, I'm going to close this out. Thank you very much for attending. I appreciate your ongoing support. And if you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button. And we will be back with you on Monday or Tuesday to give you an update on a couple of things that are happening from a policy perspective. With that, this is Rick Manning, Americans for Limited Government, signing off.